So good to be with you today. Welcome to Keystone Bible Church. Whether you're here for the first time or whether you come all the time, we're glad that you're here. It's good to be back with you. I bring greetings to you this morning from your brothers and sisters at Gospel Hope Church, where I was last Sunday. You might recall, in fact, there's Bo. Bo Bowman's with us. Good to see you, brother. And Lacey, I didn't even know you guys were going to be here today. Good to see you guys. Had a great Sunday. Pastor Bo's the lead pastor of Gospel Hope Church. And it was a great Sunday with our brothers and sisters there. Some of you, a lot of you probably remember that it's been years ago now, but God used Keystone in another season of time to come alongside a struggling church in Holiday, Florida. At the time, it was called First Baptist Church of Holiday. And over a 2-year period or so, we were able to breathe some new life into that church and bring about a degree of health that God was honored and pleased to fan the flames of over these past years. We sent Bo over there to be the lead pastor. A few of our members at the time went as well. And so it's been a while since I've been able to gather with the folks in Holiday. And since then, that church has merged with another church, Riverside, downtown Newport Richey, and they have formed one congregation now called Gospel Hope Church. And it was such a joy just to be there and see the fruit of what God continues to do in the lives of that church family. But so good to be back with you as well. I missed you. I hope you missed me. And I love being back here with all of you today. Let's take our Bibles and let's open them up to the first book in the New Testament, the book of Matthew. If you didn't bring a Bible with you today, it's super important that you can see the text for yourself. And so I'd encourage you to do one of two things. You can grab an electronic device that you probably brought in with you, like your phone or something like that, and go to Bible.com or even download a quick Bible app. Or even better, there's some guys coming up the aisle right now, and they've got copies of the Bible that they'd be happy to let you either borrow or have. If you'd like to take advantage of that, just slip your hand up. They'll put one in your hands, and you can borrow it and leave it on the seat at the end of the service. Or if you don't own a Bible at all, just consider that a free gift from us and take it home today. But it's super critical that you see the Scripture for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I want you to see what the King says about you and his world and about everything else taking place in his world. So find your way to the book of Matthew. I'll meet you there in a moment. But, I was thinking back over this past summer, and our family, like probably a lot of your family, we really got into the World Cup, watching the World Cup this summer. Any other World Cup fans out there? All right, it was a lot of fun just to watch the different teams from the different countries. That's really what makes the World Cup different than watching a lot of other sporting events. I'm a big sports fan, and typically when you're watching a sports game, you're cheering for a city maybe, or maybe not even a city. It's like a subset. It's a franchise, or you have a favorite player, so you just kind of move your allegiance from team to team wherever your favorite player goes. You're just cheering for a jersey. But the World Cup is totally different than that. For a few weeks, every 4 years, you're not cheering for a city, are you? You're cheering for a country. And that is a totally different experience. Like you can see it in the stands. You'll see grown men, they're holding onto flags and they're weeping tears of joy or defeat, depending on how it played out for them. And you'll hear crowds of people singing these patriotic anthems that you've never heard before, and in languages you've probably never heard before. You'll read reports of entire nations basically shutting down their government and shutting down their normal life for about 90 minutes because 11 guys are marching onto a field to represent the citizens in another part of the world. And so we just love this. At the Tracy house, we started, like probably most of you, cheering for the good old US of A. And let's just say that didn't last very long, right? So then we shifted our allegiance to a couple other teams that we enjoyed following through the tournament, like Argentina and Spain, and just loved everything about the World Cup, except one thing. There was one thing we did not enjoy, and before I tell you what that one thing was, I have to first explain something to you, help you understand what it's like to watch sports in my house seated next to my wife, all right? In 26 years of marriage, I'm not sure if my wife Kim has ever once accepted that an athlete who got injured in a sporting event is actually injured. She has this opinion that anytime somebody goes down, doesn't matter if we're watching basketball, football, for sure soccer, the guy goes down, he's holding his knee, I can pretty much count on what she's going to say. She's going to be like, oh, please, get up, you big baby, he's faking it, right? And usually, I mean, she's right a lot of the times, but usually what I'm doing is I'm trying to play defense. Like I'm the defense attorney for the world-class athlete who's, writhing in pain on the ground. I'm trying to explain to her that when you get hit by a 250-pound guy, like in your knee, like that hurts a lot more than it looks like on the television. And so I'm trying to play defense, but I just got to tell you, when it comes to the World Cup, I just couldn't do it. I tried at the beginning. But look at this picture. There's just no defending the floppers in this sport. You agree? Because here's what you're going to see over and over. Like there's a tangle of legs near midfield, right? Maybe there was contact, maybe there wasn't. Like I'm not sure. But one of the guys goes down. He looks like he's been struck by lightning out of the sky, right? And then the real performance begins. He's going to grab his ankle. And if he doesn't get enough attention, it's going to slowly work up his leg to his kneecap. And by the way, it's not even the same knee that he got hit with a minute ago when the player ran into him. And he rolls over and flops around. Here comes the little guy from the side with his bag of tricks to try and do something about it. And the crowd goes silent. But John and Kim Tracy, we were not silent. We're sitting there going, oh, brother, here he goes again, right? It's all a performance. Give that guy an Oscar, right? Like he's winning awards with that performance. But then it becomes obvious why all of those shenanigans are on display. Because the referee will then reach into his pocket, blow his whistle, and what will he do? He'll hold up a card, right? That's all it was ever about, which will then be proven by the amazing recovery that will take place next. The same guy who was near death's doorstep just a few seconds ago, he's going to jump up, and when that game resumes, he's not limping, he's not running slow, he is miraculously healed. It's the greatest thing in the history of modern medicine, right? Give that man an Oscar. But I started thinking about that all summer as I watched it over and over again, and it dawned on me, the flopping soccer player, I mean, I think we can agree, he's definitely lying. He's making up something that didn't actually happen, but who's he actually lying to? He's not lying to me through the television screen. And truth be told, he's not even lying to the 80,000 people sitting in the stands, because all of us watching that, we can see right through that. We know exactly what's going on. And truth is, he doesn't even care what we think anyway. He doesn't care about our opinion. There's only one man in that entire arena that he's actually trying to deceive. It's the one man with the whistle and the pocket full of cards. You agree? That's the only person in the stadium who can give him the thing that he actually wants, which is why he's doing everything he can to sell it in the moment. He is selling it for an audience of one. And that actually stayed with me all summer, because here's what I want you to think about today as we open the scripture. That instinct actually does not just live on a soccer field. I think every single one of us knows how to walk into any given room and find the one person in that room that we think can pay us in some way by our performance, right? We do it at work, we do it at home. God help us, we do it in the church a lot of the times, which brings us to one of the most uncomfortable paragraphs Jesus probably ever spoke, and a specific question he's about to put in front of every single one of us here today. Here's the question. Who are you performing for in life? When it comes to your day-to-day choices, the way you're living your life, what audience are you selling to? I'm calling today's sermon an audience of one. And I would invite you to look down at your copy of God's Word and give it your full, undivided attention. These are God's words. They were spoken by King Jesus himself from a Galilean mountainside with all of the authority of heaven behind them. In Matthew 6, beginning at verse 1, the word of the Lord says this: "Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you." These are God's words for Keystone Bible Church today. Let's ask His Spirit to come and help us learn them well, so that we will be equipped to go out and live them well in the week ahead as faithful disciples of Jesus. If you're a note taker, I hope you are. Here's the big idea that sits over top of today's passage. Begin by writing this down. The value of my giving is determined by the audience I'm trying to please. The value of my giving is determined by the audience I'm trying to please. Now, think about that for a moment. Every single one of us has the ability to give something away this week. And we can do that in a lot of different ways, right? We can give our money. We can give our time. We can give effort in a lot of different ways. Service. We can give attention, just moments of time to people. And Jesus is saying that it's possible for two people to hand the same thing over, the same amount, to maybe even the same person on the same day, and one of those gifts could be worth everything, and the other gift could be worth nothing at all. And the only variable between the two is who you were hoping would notice in the quietness of your own heart. Okay, so on the one hand, that could be a scary thought to ponder, because it could mean that your best deeds, like your best week you ever had, where you went out and did a whole lot of hard things, it actually could be worth nothing at all. Could have been a total waste. But this could also be a thrilling thing to ponder, the fact that in the smallest moments when you served, when you gave behind the scenes and nobody thanked you and nobody appreciated you and nobody came to praise you, actually, that could have been the greatest thing that you have ever done. The most valuable moments of your life could be in moments like that. Let me show you 3 specific ways that Jesus teaches us how to maximize our lives for the right audience, for an audience of one. We'll break it down like this in outline form. To please the right audience, I must, number 1, expose the part of me that wants to look better than I am. I got to expose the part of me that wants to look better than I am. Look at verse 1 again, and notice the very first word out of Jesus' mouth. Do you see it? Say it to me. Shout it out. Beware, right? Beware. That's a very strong word in the original language, and it means to take hold of something, to literally keep your eyes fixed on something. It's the word you would use for a man who has been assigned watch overnight. He's sitting there and he's guarding something, right? He's been given a standing order, and it's not going to end anytime soon. Like keep watching, stand guard, do it every single day for the rest of your life. That's what Jesus is talking about when he says, beware. And beware of what? What does he say? Be on guard, stand firm, watch out for this, practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. All right, now if you grew up on the old King Jimmy version of the Bible like I did, you might remember that this reads a little different in the King James. It says this, take heed that ye do not your alms before men. That ye do not your alms before men. All right, but here's the problem with that. The oldest manuscripts actually do not say alms in verse 1. They say righteousness. And that one word, if you change alms to righteousness or righteousness to alms, like that reshapes the entire chapter. It means 2 different things with those 2 different words. If verse 1 says alms, then this is really just talking about our giving, like our financial giving. But if, in fact, as the original manuscripts say, it says righteousness, then verse 1 is not like one example of how this happens. It's actually like a heading over all of them, which is then broken down. Like if you look further in the text, you'll see that he is going to give specific examples to follow, like look at verse 2, giving, 2 through 4, then praying, verses 5 through 15, fasting, verses 16 through 18. But the point I'm making is that verse 1 is sort of like a heading over the hallway. You can think about it like that, and you walk down the hallway, and there's these different doors that all kind of lead and open to the same room. Does that make sense? And I especially want you to notice the one phrase here that does all the damage. If the heading is, beware practicing your good deeds, your righteous deeds before men, here's the key statement. In order to be seen by them. All right, that's what Jesus is going after here. All right, the word behind to be seen, this is where we get our English word for theater. Theater. So start thinking about that. You understand what he's saying? He's warning about righteousness being performed, or like think of a theater context. You're acting. It's not real. You're doing it for the praise of people. You're on a stage. That's what you find in a theater, right? You find people dressed up in clothes. Those aren't their clothes. They're playing a role. You find people quoting memorized scripts. They didn't write those scripts. That's not flowing from their heart. It's not their words. They're repeating words that aren't real. And who are they doing it for? They're doing it for an audience. And why are they doing it for the audience? For an applause, right? And let me be sure to point out here what he does not say. I want you to get this. He does not say, beware of practicing your righteousness where other people can see you. Do you see that? It's not about whether or not the deeds of righteousness can be seen. It's not the publicity that makes it a problem. It's those three little words there in the middle. It's so that, in order that people would see you. That's the issue. The sin is not in the visibility. It is in the purpose. It's in the motive. It's the why you're doing it. Not so much that people can see it. And some of you are maybe you're already kind of flipping back a page in the Bible to fact check what I'm saying here, because it seems like just 15 minutes earlier in the same sermon, Jesus said something that sounds pretty much the opposite of this. Do you remember? You remember what he said in the last chapter? Let your light shine before others. Why? So that others may see your good works. So we get here and we're like, which is it, Jesus? Am I supposed to show off my good works that other people would see it and glorify the Father, or am I not supposed to do that? Now, I think the answer is sitting right there in the grammar. Here in chapter 5, what did it say? When people see your good works, they end up glorifying who? Who gets the glory? The Father, right? But in chapter 6, it's different. The giver ends up getting the glory. I get the praise from other people. So again, I could be doing the same thing with the same degree of visibility. That's not the issue. There's glory to be had. The difference is who's getting the glory. When the payment comes, whose name is on the receipt? Who gets the credit? The question was never whether or not people can see your good deeds or not. The question is whose name gets all of the fame. And I wonder if you remember where this whole section that we're in right now started, because we've been in it for a while. It actually originated all the way back in chapter 5, verse 20. Maybe glance back there and look at that real quick, where Jesus said this. He said that your righteousness actually has to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees if you want to enter into his kingdom. And then he took the rest of chapter 5 to sort of systematically tear apart everything that the Pharisees, taught about that. Do you remember? So he applies that to their teaching on murder and on adultery and divorce and oaths and revenge. And so now we're in chapter 6 and he's turning a corner and he's no longer going after what they taught. He's now going after what the Pharisees, practiced. You see? He's not just coming after their theology anymore. He's coming for their lifestyle. It's not just Sunday, it's Tuesday afternoon now. And I think that's a far more uncomfortable conversation for most of us, because in a room like this, Keystone Bible Church, this isn't true of everybody here, but I think the majority of people here, we would say, you've got your theology in pretty good shape. Heads full of knowledge in this room is not typically the problem for most of us. Where does the problem come in? It comes in the living that out Monday through Saturday before we gather again in 7 days on the next Lord's Day, right? And I want you to see the verdict that he attaches to any kind of hypocritical righteousness that's going on in our lives Monday through Friday. He literally says here, if you're a person who practices righteousness in order to be seen by people, what does he say? Look at it. You will have, how much reward are you going to get? None. No reward from your Father who is in heaven. And the grammar there is even sharper than probably the way it appears in our English translations. It's not simply that the paycheck fails to arrive. It's that when your Father accounts for all the good things you did in your life, guess what? There's no value there at all. It's as if he looked. It's not that he didn't look. He looked. He investigated carefully. And he found there was nothing there to look at. I was actually reading in John MacArthur's commentary on this. He told a story about an Eastern ascetic holy man from the other side of the world, and this guy made his living, if you can call it that, by literally trying to be holy in public. And here's how he would do it. Every single morning, he would go out and he'd find a place on a busy street corner, and he would position himself in a very visible location there, and he would cover himself in dust and ashes. He's wearing impoverished clothing, and he just looked like a terribly poor man, all covered in dirt and filth, because in that part of the world, ashes actually are a picture of humility. The ashes kind of say, I've renounced everything in this world, and I own nothing, and I want nothing, and I basically died to all the pleasures of the earth. And people, according to John MacArthur, he saw this guy on the side of the road, and he said the people would walk back and forth past him all day, and they would sort of marvel at his devotion, and as tourists will often do, sometimes even people visiting that part of the area would see him on the street corner, and they'd go over and politely ask him if they could take his photograph. And MacArthur says he once watched this go down, where this self-professing holy man looks up at such a tourist who said, can I take your picture? And he says, sure, just a moment. Let me rearrange the ashes for the photo. And MacArthur says, see, that's what Jesus is talking about. Arranging the evidence of your false humility so that the picture will come out just right. What is that? It's no different than the World Cup soccer player I told you about, right? He's selling it. He's selling the moment. He's selling the story, selling the show. It's all a facade. It's not real. It's theater. It's what Jesus said here. It's a performance. And before we get too comfortable, like sort of looking down on that self-righteous guy in a pile of ashes, I think we need to understand something. The sin we're talking about today is probably one of the most respectable in this room, isn't it? I mean, notice what Jesus is actually warning us about. It's not overt sin. He's not warning you about the worst sins you did this week. He's warning you about your righteousness, friends. In other words, chapter 5 already warned you about all the really obvious sins like lust and anger and adultery and revenge. Everybody expects sermons on those things, right? But this is not that. This is a warning about your best moments in life. What we would call your good deeds. Like he's warning you about your prayer life. He's warning you about your acts of service in the church, your volunteer moments. All the things that you would say, these are the things, the righteous deeds I'm doing as a Christian. Here's what you need to know about that. Listen, your sin most certainly is dangerous, but guess what? Your righteousness may actually be even more dangerous. You understand? Because your righteousness is the thing that you think you can earn God's pleasure with. You think you are deserving of something from Him. Your sin never tempts you to believe that you don't need a Savior, but your righteousness certainly does. I want you to listen to what Pastor John Piper said about that. Quote, when you do something praiseworthy to get the praise of man, you are not doing the praiseworthy thing. You are doing, hear this, you are doing the praise-craving thing. You hear what he's saying there? You didn't actually do a good thing at all. There's no benefit to it. You did the craving thing. That's why you did that good deed. The good deed was just the delivery vehicle for you to get the praise. And so let me be clear. Here's what verse 1 is actually requiring of you and me today. And it's probably one of the hardest things to wrap your mind around. So some of the hardest work that we do in the Christian life. Here it is. Go find the part of you that wants to look better than you actually are and drag that thing out in the light today and confess it as sin so that God can deal with it. What is that in your life? The thing that you want people to think good about you for doing. I'll help you. Let's start asking some questions. Probably questions we'd rather avoid. Like why did you really volunteer for that highly visible role in the church where there was a need there, but you keep refusing to serve in the behind-the-scenes stuff, like maybe in the nursery, right? Why do you keep mentioning that specific dollar amount that you so generously gave to somebody? Why do you have to say the number all the time? Why does it bother you so much that nobody noticed when you served? Nobody thanked you. Nobody praised you. Why does it bother you so much? Why do you keep telling that particular story about yourself over and over? Why do you tell it that way? Why do you feel the need to constantly remind everybody else of all the people that you're helping and how many individuals are depending on you all the time and all the sacrifices you and your family are making with your time and your talent and your treasure? Why do you got to talk about it? Because listen carefully, every single time you do that, Jesus' message today is very clear. You've already been paid. Whatever satisfaction you get in those few fleeting seconds of boasting and it feels really good, like tell other people about your good deeds, guess what? That's all the payout you're ever going to get. Parents, do I need to state the obvious? Your kids are already comparing the version of you that shows up in the church parking lot with the version they watched in your home all week long. And I promise you this, you are not fooling them at all. They can see right through any theatrics, hypocritical living, the charades in your household that get smoothed over on Sunday. You're not fooling them. You're not fooling God. And notice also, Jesus doesn't leave this discussion very general. I think there's some general applications, but he's going to take this heading of of practicing our deeds of righteousness, and he is going to drill down into some specific areas. For example, in verse 2, look at this. He drives this down into one painfully practical place, which would be our money. You see that? That leads us to our second main point today. To please the right audience, I must, number 2, stop turning somebody else's need into a billboard for my goodness. Stop turning somebody else's need into a billboard for my goodness. Look at verse 2. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, says Jesus, I say to you, they have already received their reward. All right, now first of all, do not skip past that little word, when. When, because Jesus does not say if. Do you notice that? So he doesn't say if you feel led to give to the needy. He says when you give to the needy. So he's assuming you are giving to the needy. Like you are doing this. In fact, he's going to use that same language 3 times in this chapter. The same construction. He's going to use it for giving. He's later going to use the same thing for praying. When you pray, as in certainly you are because you're a faithful follower of Jesus. And then even for fasting. And each of the 3 times, he's saying the same thing. I am assuming that all of my real followers are doing these things. This is what all of my genuine followers do. They give, they pray, they fast. That's his point here. So understand, there's no escape hatch in verse 2. I've heard people look at a passage like this, and they sort of conclude, I would hate to give with the wrong reason, and so I just won't give at all. No, it doesn't work for Jesus. And here's another thing. The word he uses for give does not describe a feeling, all right? The word here is actually an action word. In other words, you can feel compassion all day long. Like we've probably all watched a television commercial for some poor child in another part of the world, and we feel compassion welling up within us for that poor individual. But because of our skepticism about the giving process or where the money actually goes and who are we really funding, we don't act on it, right? Well, the point being, it's like feeling compassionate is not the same thing as putting action to it. He's talking about the action part, actually doing something in response to the compassion you feel. And on the flip side of that, even if you don't feel compassion, there's still an obligation to be generous. We don't just obey when we feel like it. And we don't get to disobey when we don't feel like it. And what a vivid picture he uses to illustrate this. He says, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you. Okay? Now here's what's interesting about that. There's actually no record anywhere in the ancient world of there ever being Jewish people who literally did this, like sounded a trumpet before they gave money to somebody else. Like you can read ancient sources, even outside the Bible. You'll never find any description of this exact thing happening. And so most scholars actually think Jesus is sort of being funny here. It's almost like his ancient version of like drawing a caricature or a cartoon. So imagine in your mind, it's like some silly picture of a man on his way to help a poor person. And so he walks out of the house, and as he walks down the street, he like parades down the street with a full brass band behind him, sort of announcing with pomp and circumstance the fact that here I come to do this good thing, right? Clear the road. Let the fanfare begin. I have an announcement to make. I'm about to bless somebody with my generosity. All right, now that very well could be the imagery. I mean, for sure at face value, that's what Jesus is aiming for here. And if that's all it is, that makes sense in context. But I would say to you today, there may also be even more to this, because if you research what was going on in the temple at the time, there was actually out in the outer court, what was called the court of the women, there were 13 collection chests. And each one of those chests had a narrow trumpet-shaped figurine or statue on top of the chest, like where they would give their offerings. There was actually this image of a trumpet right on top of those chests. And so whenever a man passed by the court of the women, he could literally take a fistful of coins and throw it down the funnel of that trumpet, and you would hear the coins like clanging all throughout the courtyard as they would spin down the trumpet's funnel down into the collection box. And so nobody had to actually blow a trumpet for people to realize somebody just gave a gift. No, the sound from the offering box was the trumpet that would get everybody's attention. And they had taken that and they had built an entire culture that was running on that idea. Generosity in this day was a transaction. And so if you gave, you always expected to get paid back in some way, at least with recognition and honor. But giving was always like with strings attached in some way. And let's be honest, is that just an ancient problem? Like, do you see that in our world today? Now, I just read last week about a college that drew up some plans for a new building. They're going to put a big tower on the property, and guess what? Like, the drawings themselves noted that the tower would be named after whoever funded it the most. And so guess what happened? A whole line of people show up, like nearly a dozen people line up wanting their name to be the one on the top of that tower. And at the end, the article said only one of them got it, and so his name is going to get carved into stone over the entrance, over the doorway, so that every single person has to read his name before they go into that building. And it's going to still be there long after he dies. Long after anybody even remembers who he is, his name will still be etched there for all to read. See, I would argue, friends, that is not a gift. That is just another guy performing. He's selling it in the moment. He's selling it in granite. And our culture has built a whole ladder out of this, haven't they? Like most of us, like we sort of know we don't have our class system in America, but we know which ladder we're on, or which rung of the ladder, which one we typically hang out, what class of citizenry we belong in. And when it comes to giving, like a big gift is going to get your name on a building like that. Like most of us, we're not in a class where we're going to see our name on the side of a building. You know, where maybe a moderate gift is going to maybe get you a plaque inside, or a real small gift, that's going to get your name on a brick in the courtyard, or just a little label underneath something, right? We sell naming rights to tag our generosity so that everybody knows when and how and what we gave. And let's be honest, friends, churches do the same thing, don't they? Parachurch organizations, they do the same thing. We need to be really careful about that, because I would say to you, it is just as wrong to appeal to a wrong motive as it is to have that wrong motive yourself. In fact, look what Jesus calls all of that. The people doing that, what does he call them here? Hypocrites. You see it? Hypocrites, all right? Now, in the first century, that was not a religious insult. Like we hear that as an insult today, but in the first century, that was a real job. That was a job title. A hypocrite was a professional stage actor. If you were a hypocrite, you were a person who was regularly putting on a mask and pretending to be somebody you weren't, and people would come and watch you play act and applaud for you. And Matthew loves this word. He's going to use this word so many times, in fact, 13 times in his book, more than the entire rest of the New Testament combined. Like, this is one of his favorite words. And here's the part about that should really make us sick. Read the verse again and ask this question. What's actually happening in this scene that he's painting for us? There's a real person involved here. There's a poor person. There's a real person in need, right? Do you see it there? A real human being with a real need. A person who is hungry. A person who cannot pay a bill. Like, we don't know the exact background here, but this is a real person. And the man with the trumpet is looking at this person's worst day. Maybe it's been his whole life like this. And he, instead of having genuine compassion and sorrow and with a desire to truly help, what does he see? He sees an opportunity to advance himself. He doesn't come in to relieve the need. He comes in to use the need. It's like I heard a politician once say, we never want to waste a good crisis, right? Let's capitalize on the moment. And so the poor man is not being loved as a neighbor here. He's being used. He's just a prop in the play for the performer. He's the backdrop. He's a billboard with a heartbeat. He's an advertisement reading something like this for the man with the trumpet. Look how good I am to lower myself, to help somebody like that. Do you see? That's what makes this sin so ugly, because it doesn't just steal from God. It doesn't just steal glory from God. It uses a real suffering human being as the raw material to do the stealing. This guy is selling it. He's on a stage. He's given the performance of a lifetime. He's using somebody else's misery to close the deal. And so be warned, hypocrites. What does Jesus say about a person like that? What does Jesus say about organizations, companies, businesses, ministries, churches like that? Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. That's all the good you're ever going to get out of that. Now, people might think you're doing good things in the world, but there's no good coming. There's no more reward coming of eternal value. That's actually one of the most chilling sentences in the entire New Testament. You really only feel it fully if you know the word that's tucked up underneath here. It's a commercial term. In fact, archaeologists have literally dug up ancient receipts like that were used in real purchases, and this exact word is stamped across the front of the receipt. You know what it means? Paid in full. Account settled. Nothing more is owed. The bill has been paid. See, that hypocrites, they've already gotten all they're ever going to get. They got paid. They got their 5 seconds of happiness in being praised. They wanted people to get impressed. Guess what? People were impressed. And so the people applauded, and the transaction was closed. But guess what? The joke's on them in the end because the return that they've received is all that they're ever going to get. It's already been delivered in full. Why? Because the hypocrite is not actually giving. The hypocrite is selling. He got paid with the praise of people. He sold something. He got paid for it, and so nothing else is coming. It's that World Cup soccer player all over again, right? This is exactly why the flopper jumps right back up off the turf after faking that injury. You know, why does he quit writhing the second the whistle blows? Because there's nothing left for him to lie about. He already got paid. He got the thing he wanted. He already got a reward when the ref made the call. That is exactly what Jesus is saying here in this story. And I don't want you to miss the most terrifying part about it. He doesn't say that the man, who gives for applause receives a smaller reward from God. Right? How much reward is he getting again? He's getting no reward. None at all. It's not just reduced. It's eliminated. It's zeroed out. This is where this whole topic starts being less about our Christian daily habits and actually starts becoming more about our salvation itself. You say, John, are you implying that hypocrites will lose their salvation? No, I'm not. I'm saying that hypocrites are advertising that they may not be saved at all in the first place. And that's pretty sobering, friends, because if it's possible to perform every religious duty on the list, hand over real money, spend hours in prayer, be doing all kinds of good things, and still stand before God with an empty account, then I ask you, what hope is there for any of us here today? Well, I'm glad you asked that. Because are you aware that there was actually a man who went and hung on a Roman cross outside of Jerusalem? And just before he died, guess what he cried out in a single word? It's a word translated in our English Bibles as, "It is finished." It is finished. And that was not a sigh of relief for Jesus Christ. That was the exact same kind of word that we just looked at in verse 2. It's a business term. It's a transaction word. It's the kind of word you would stamp across a paid-off debt when nothing else is owed. It means paid in full. That's what Jesus was announcing from the cross. You say, well, what debt did he pay in full? Another great question, because that's actually the whole reason that Jesus came to the earth in the first place. Because, in fact, you and I owe the Father a debt that we cannot pay on our own. It's why he came to live the sinless life that we cannot. It's why he died the substitution death that you and I deserve to die ourselves. It's why he then rose victoriously from the dead to offer new resurrection life abundantly to anyone who will believe and follow him by faith as the Lord of their lives. What I'm saying is that there are only 2 receipts available to you this morning. You can stamp your own receipt with applause that you receive down here on earth, and it will be worth the pat on the back that you receive for about 5 minutes afterward. Or you can take his receipt, bought in his blood, settled forever. You can take that in your place, as if you paid it yourself. Let me just be really clear, because I'm using a lot of analogies there. Let me make sure you're getting this. If the Spirit of God is stirring something inside of you right now, I'm saying you do not have to clean yourself up and perform for God. You don't have to stamp your own receipt to come to him. You simply need to respond to the one who is calling to you. Turn away from your sin today. Turn away from your efforts to live your life your own way and put the whole weight of your faith and your confidence and your loyal love on the King, the real King, Jesus Christ the Lord. Do it today. And for those of us who would say we already do belong to him, let me just be quick to point out that Jesus does not stop at simply telling us what not to do in this passage. That's what I love about Jesus. He doesn't just say, stop doing this, don't do it. He always gives this replacement as well. Put this off, put this on. And in verses 3 and 4, we see that alternative. And the alternative might be a little stranger than you expect it to be. Follow along in verse 3. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Point number 3, to please the right audience, I must become more obsessed with my Father's approval than people's applause. Bottom line, I got to care more about what God thinks than what other people think, right? And that whole left hand, right hand language, like that's a little strange. Like, what's that talking about? You need to know that in the ancient world, the right hand was always considered to be the stronger hand, the right arm, stronger arm. And so it would be, in this context, the hand or the arm that's reaching to give a gift. It's reaching into the purse. It's pulling out the coin. It's placing it in somebody else's palm. The right hand's doing all the work. And so which hand then is left to be the one to observe what the right hand is doing? Right? It's your left hand, right? That's the nearest possible witness to what the right hand just did. Your left hand can't really practically help but know what the right hand just did. And so Jesus is using that, what would seem to be an absurd illustration, to say, don't even let the closest thing, the closest person, the closest witness, don't even let them know about your generous gifts to others. And the grammar is super urgent. It's a rare construction Matthew reaches for only a handful of times, and it means this: shut it down right now. Stop doing it. There's no exceptions to this. Never should this be true in the lives of my followers. Okay, so you're tracking with what he's done here in our text, and in verse 2, he took away your audience of other people. But now, verse 3, who's the audience he's really talking about here? Like, who owns both of these hands? Well, God, ultimately, but like, what body are they attached to? They're attached to your body, right? He's talking about your hands. So ultimately, he's talking about you, yourself. See, here's the truth that most of us have never said out loud. You don't actually need a crowd to perform for. You can actually, do something completely anonymous, as the text is calling you to do. You can do some anonymous act of generosity, and no human being ever knows about it, but then you can spend all afternoon just sitting there quietly applauding yourself, thinking about how great you are, thinking about how much more you're doing than everybody else. What is that? I mean, nobody clapped in public, so what are you doing? You're clapping for yourself. You're still selling it. You just cut the audience down to only one seat, and you're the one sitting in the seat. It's that inner ovation. And Jesus is saying it's every bit as deadly because it's still the wrong audience. You're still performing for the wrong one. That's what verse 2 is going at. Verse 2 kills the trumpet. Verse 3 kills the little standing ovation you throw for yourself in the privacy of your own head. Or let's think about the other side of the coin. Sometimes we come home from pouring ourselves out for someone else, whether it's like financial gifts, whether it's like serving with our spirit gifts in the church context or in some other context, and because we did not receive the praise we were hoping for, it's not an applause we give ourselves. It's actually a little pity party we throw for ourselves, isn't it? When we don't get the satisfactory attention we were hoping for. Jesus sees right through all of that. He's requiring his followers to practice something radically different than that. What does he want? He wants our giving to be so reflexive, so much a part of who we've become and how we live that we barely even register doing it. We don't even notice how generous we're being because it's such a part of who we are. And it doesn't matter how many people acknowledge it. This was not some impossible ideal that nobody had ever imagined in Jesus' day. He's actually alluding to something very specific that I think all of these people that were listening to him on that hillside would have known about. In the temple in Jerusalem, there was actually a specific room there. And you could go into that room. Like if you wanted to help somebody and you didn't want them to know about it, you were trying to practice what Jesus said here, and you didn't want to receive praise, you could go into this particular room and slip in there anonymously with a gift, and you could leave it in that room. And then you could slip out quietly, and nobody would ever know that you went in, and they wouldn't know what you left. But then later, somebody in need could walk into that same room alone, and they had the ability to take from whatever had been left there. They could do it privately. And so there was a covering for them that they didn't have to feel any form of embarrassment, like nobody was standing there passing out the gifts. And there was a covering for the giver because he didn't have any opportunity to even see the person that would be blessed, to know to have an opportunity for pride to well up. It was completely private and it was completely anonymous. And so guess what the name of that room was in the temple? It was called the Chamber of the Silent. The Chamber of the Silent. So literally in the most public building on the earth at that time, at least for the Jewish people, the temple, like that, the most publicity of all was happening there, right? In a city crawling with men doing the very thing Jesus is talking about, like blowing their horns in their streets to announce their generosity and their acts of service. God had allowed for this one particular room where that whole system was supposed to be switched off. You could go in there and you didn't perform. You went in there and you realized only God and His eyes are the ones that matter in here, in this chamber of secrets. Even the rabbis themselves, they would sometimes secretly give in the chamber of secret silence, is what it was called. And there's writings where they said this is even, people that do this, they're even greater than our father Moses. They really respected the people that would take advantage of that. And yet, for many, it was nothing more than an empty tradition. And that's, I think, what Jesus has in the backdrop as He talks about, look at verse 4 where this all lands. Your Father, imagine that secret room, that quiet room, that place where there is no applause, there's no fanfare. Jesus wants you to know that in that quiet place, verse 4, your Father who sees in secret. There's somebody watching. And what will He do? He will reward you. First notice, your Father who sees, present tense. He sees in an ongoing way, in a continuous way. God is not, you have to understand that He's not just occasionally checking in on you. I think some Christians, they think that. It's like, I hope God, when He checks in on me this week, He finds me doing good things. No, He's watching all the time. You understand that? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, God's watching not just your external acts, He's watching the motives and the thoughts that are going on the inside of you. In fact, I wonder if you remember how I told you a few weeks back in chapter 5, verse 33, that you and I have never actually once had a private conversation. Remember talking about that? Why? Because the king's always in the room. The king's always listening in. He's always hearing both the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart. He hears all of it. Well, here's sort of the other half of that same argument. He's not just listening, He's watching too. And that cuts both ways, doesn't it? Because if you're the one who's been hypocritically performing, guess what? The knowledge of God watching you, that's sort of a fearful thing. God sees all of the fakeness behind the facade, right? But on the other hand, if you've been faithful in the secret places, you've been quietly serving behind the scenes and nobody ever said a word about it or gave thanks or appreciated what you do, guess what? God sees that too. The Father sees it. And so this is where the logic of this passage starts to really work itself out in our lives. Everything Jesus asked really only makes sense if there is a real world that we cannot see, where there is a real Father in it whose attention is worth infinitely more than the attention we can get in the here and now. See, if this visible world is all that there is, friends, then the flopper on the soccer field's actually right. You should just do everything you can to get paid right now, to get the call, to take the applause, to cash out in the moment and get all the fleeting fame that you can. But if, in fact, there is an unseen throne, and if there is a real Father who is seated on that throne and His eyes never close and His ears the volume's never turned down, right? Then guess what? The giving in secret is not a sacrifice. It's actually the smartest investment a human being can ever make this side of heaven. That's really the punchline of this entire passage. Look at it one more time. Your Father who sees in secret will do what? What does it say? He will reward you. Okay, that's not a threat. Like the hypocrites hear that and they're like, oh, great, I'm going to get what's coming to me, right? He's not threatening there. This is a promise. It's a glorious promise for those who are being faithful in the little things, in the quiet places. God is guaranteeing a great outcome for you. All right, now again, some translations, they add a word here. They add the word openly, as in your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Maybe you have a translation in front of you that says something like that. I just have to tell you the word openly is also not in the oldest manuscripts, which is why the ESV does not include it. And that matters a lot because, again, adding that word openly actually changes the whole message of what Jesus is saying here. The contrast that He's presenting to us is not between giving secretly and then later getting paid publicly. That would just be showing off for a delayed payment later. That is not the point that Jesus is making. His point is to contrast a temporary reward in the here and now on the earth with an exponentially greater reward that is promised by the Father Himself. It's the contrast of the value of the reward, not the publicity of the reward. And what kind of reward is it? What's the reward he's talking about? Well, I want you to picture for a moment a little 5-year-old kid who just got a brand new magic kit for his birthday. And so he comes running into the living room. He's all excited about this, and he lines up the family. He wants to do his first little magic show, and he announces, I'm going to perform a magic trick by making a coin disappear. And so he does his very best. He read the manual. He's got the little coin that came in the kit, and truth be told, he's terrible. Like, you can see it the whole time. His sister's like, that was so dumb. I can see the coin. I know it's in your other hand. And, his brother's like, no, like that was just a terrible magic trick. You need to pack it up. You're never going to be a magician. But what's Daddy doing, the father? He's sitting there on the couch. He's watching every second of that go down. And at the end, the father stands to his feet, and he claps as if he's just witnessed a miracle, right? What's going on in the heart of that little 5-year-old boy when the father stands and gives the applause? He's bursting with pride and joy, right? It doesn't matter that his siblings thought it was terrible. It doesn't matter that he didn't get paid by the audience, for delivering the show on that day. That's not why the child came. It's not what he's trying to earn in that moment. What did he come into the living room for? So that his dad would applaud, so that his dad would watch. The whole reward was when the father delighted in what he saw in the son. Friends, that is what verse 4 is offering you. It's not offering you wages. It's not offering you a temporary payout in the here and now. It's not offering you fame. He's offering you a father who sees, a father who is not indifferent, a father who smiles over his children and rejoices with you. It's the Father's pleasure. That is the reward. Pastor David Platt said it like this: the most important part of your life is the part that no one else but God sees. I wholeheartedly agree. So let me make this painfully practical as we close, okay? This week, we're about to walk out there and we're going to pursue the mission of Christ, right? How about if we go out there and we do something genuinely good for somebody else, and we do everything in our power to make sure nobody ever finds out that it was us? How about that? Write the check and tell nobody about it. Pay the bill anonymously. Show up early next week and help set up chairs and leave before anybody knows that you were the one that did it. Serve in a behind-the-scenes area where there's a genuine need, even if you never get thanked. And do it with joy in your heart for King Jesus, right? And whenever you feel that little itch start to rise up in a conversation to tell somebody else, and trust me, it will rise. I feel it in my own heart. Recognize that itch for what it is and put it to death immediately, because that itch is the whole sermon. That is the trumpet Jesus is talking about. That's the flop on the field. It's the hypocritical performance. It's your left hand sneaking a look at your right hand. But every single time you refuse that, you refuse to feed it, you refuse to program it and proclaim it to others, you're actually preaching truth to your own soul. You're reminding yourself, I actually already have an audience. I have an audience of one, the Father, and He's watching me the whole time. He's listening to what I'm saying. He sees my heart, and His opinion is the only one that I care about. The value of my giving is determined by the audience I'm trying to please. Let's close by confessing whatever parts of us want to look better than we are. And let's refuse to turn one more person's need into a billboard for our own goodness. Because as followers of Jesus Christ, we are to be totally obsessed with the Father's approval over every other person's applause. His approval really is the only one that matters. Would you bow your heads and let's pray together? Father, we thank you so much for the clarity of your word today. We thank you for the conviction in our hearts. We thank you for reminding us, calling us back to live our lives consistently with the truth claims of Scripture that Jesus, you heralded yourself from your own words from your own lips 2,000 years ago. We recognize, God, that we see ourselves in this text. This is a mirror for us. We're guilty. We do this all the time, and we're blind to it most of the time. We don't even realize that we're living these lives of blowing trumpets to promote our self-righteousness. And how convicting to see today that when we do that, it throws all of the good deeds that we were doing away. It values them at nothing. Lord, we don't want to be a church that's worth nothing on the last day. We don't want to be a people that you look down on and you say all that stuff they're doing down there at Keystone Bible Church is worthless. No, we want to be people, brothers and sisters, who are truly following Jesus Christ, so much so that when you look down across the landscape of Tampa Bay, you smile. You're pleased, not because of our good deeds in and of themselves, but because of the good work you're doing in us, that it is praiseworthy. May it be for the praise of your glory and your grace, God. Would you keep us from stealing glory from you in the week ahead? But would you use us powerfully in this community, in the lives of our families and our co-workers, our neighbors, and for sure our church, our fellow church brothers and sisters right here at Keystone. We need your help in this, God. Like, this is not natural to us. It's not the way we think. It's not the way our culture has taught us to operate. It's the upside down view of the kingdom of Jesus Christ, where we're being called to live differently than the natural order. Give us Spirit-enabled ability to do that faithfully until you come back and get us, and we will give you the praise. You are the name that is worthy, and we want to lift it up today. In Jesus' name, I pray.